When we see players go below 8.5 is when things get spicy. But Noedirbek also bid lower. That's what I'm saying. I think both of these guys really wanted black, and they liked their chances to get a draw.
Yeah, it's interesting because they've had two really kind of complex, decisive games. So Wesley, to back himself to go for the draw here, means he's got something up his sleeve, and we see a repeat of one of the clashes from earlier. This time, Bishop G4. Last time we saw Wesley choose something slightly different. But same opening from Abdusattorov. He's showing he's not afraid. He just wants to keep life, as many pieces on the board as possible, and he'll maybe flag Wesley later, or at least try to outplay him.
I said flagging is allowed. It's not only allowed, but it's highly encouraged.
It's highly encouraged,
in
right?
the Armageddon. And we've seen in these bidding Armageddons, often the players are going for this 8 to 9 minute mark. Is that the sweet spot?
I would say yes, just because we see them all bidding within that range, right? And again, I don't know how many of these players are discussing it with their seconds, with their coaches, with their friends and family, and with their dogs. I don't know. I mean, where they're getting wherever they're getting advice from, we tend to see players keep it above 8.5 minutes most of the time. But again, in this matchup, these guys did draw both their games before the final two decisive games, right? So I'm just kind of unpacking the psychology there. I think Wesley really wanted the black pieces, so he was willing to risk a few more seconds on the clock. Bold strategy, Simon. We'll see if it pays off, right?
Yeah. I mean, it looks pretty solid for black so far. I mean, the structure we've had in most of the games, actually, and more pieces getting in exchange. You've got to think this favours the side that's trying to get the draw. I mean, look, they're just hoovering them off, aren't they? Get the hoover out, and most of them are gone already. There's only a pair of knights left, and they could be gone. And then we get a very pure Carlsberg structure, which David's already mentioned on numerous occasions. And I suppose the one thing White must rely on here is that knight in the centre, supported by a pawn, which will be coming up, the F-pawn. I can't see what else White can try to do, really.
Yeah, it feels like at some point as well he'll have to generate an attack against the black king. It might look counterintuitive on the face of it because White's pawn majority is on the queen side, but it means basically you've locked down that side of the board, so you can switch your full attention, especially your pieces, towards the other flank. And yeah, it's still a lot of life left, despite the fact we've seen all the bishops leave.
This game reminds me a lot of the Armageddon battle we saw between Nihal Sarin and Anish Giri at last year's Chess.com Global Championship, and that it was a super tame, and we were sort of like, what's going on here? Isn't this helpful for black to trade off the pieces and just get to a simple position? But we found that Nihal was going for this on purpose, and the position became super simple where he just drained the clock. Yeah. And ultimately they got down to a scramble where objectively it should have been a draw, but Nihal managed to swindle it. So anyway, interesting strategy.
White has to win on demand with those extra minutes on the clock. And right now, Wesley's used quite a bit of the time. He's down to about 6.5 minutes. What do you make of that? Do you think Abdusattorov, having to win on demand, has managed to keep it under control on the clock at least?
On the clock, it's been great work. And on the board, that's the bigger question, maybe, because now Wesley's offered a trade of queens. He backed up last move, Abdusattorov, saying, OK, at least I want knights on the board, but now if you keep the queens on, it will come at the cost of a pawn. White's pawn on A2 will be juicy, up for grabs. So big decision right now on the clock. 7 minutes is a huge difference, especially if you can kind of play those simplified positions that Danny mentioned right to the bitter end. But big decision now, to take or not to take.
Yeah, massive decision. I mean, if you take the queens off, you might be getting nearer to that draw because, OK, the queen is the most dangerous piece, as we all know. The only other option I can see, if you just slide the queen over and use your H-pawn and just try and generate this attack against black's king. And I think in the match situation, this is a much cleverer choice. And maybe even the black queen can get in some trouble. And there's, I think, quite a lot of danger here for black.
I like it.
You know,
I mean,
that move is because now you push Harry. It's always Harry, isn't it?
Harry.
He's such a hero.
He's
getting the job done. He is. He needs a medal. That guy. I mean, look at him. He's just going to push forwards, do some damage to the black king. The white knight's coming in. It's well. I mean, look at the evaluation bar as well. The evaluation bar is really not like.
I was sitting here trying to wonder what it was. Is it a queen trap or is it just H5 and go ahead? I guess it's just push him, baby. Go for the attack.
Yeah, and then you have to decide where you put the knight, right? Do you put the knight in the middle, trying to trap black's queen, or do you go directly for the king by putting it on this square? And this square, threatening checkmate, it looks scary, right? The black queen is well out of play. It's going to take a couple of moves to get back in. And Wesley seems to be disappearing into the camera as well. You know, he's getting nearer and nearer to the camera. I mean, this is scary stuff, right?
Scary. If I was facing you here, Simon, I would be terrified. And all white needs to do somehow is get this queen into the black position. Do you wriggle it around to this square? Maybe you come across. Either way, the black king is in huge trouble. Sometimes you can lift your rook up the board and swing it across to h3. It looks like you've got 3 very strong potential attacking pieces. Black doesn't have too many defenders. So despite the fact saying the computer is saying it's completely winning for white, you still need the execution. And what do we think here? G6, Wesley's playing with fire, but...
and I agree with the point Tanya, or I forget if it was Tanya or Simon made, but someone made the point about it was much better to keep the queens on the board, just from a practical point of view at the time. We didn't know that Wesley was going to take A2 and allow this, but I totally agree, and I think just letting your opponent think you have to use the advantage you have on the clock, and it's really paying off here.
Just keeping more pieces on the board, and we see a trade on G6, and the knight captures. Is that a decision that surprised you?
It did surprise me, I've got to say.
I think
just taking with the pawn, maybe there was a tactical issue.
I was going to
here.
say there must have been something wrong with H6, G6.
Maybe it's the white queen just coming across, and it would have slid in with a nasty checkmate. Some tactics here, meaning that black cannot defend, but now black's structure is fractured. And yeah, maybe it's just the brute force approach. Push forward, blow open lines towards the black king while the queen is so far divorced from the king side.
I would ask if anyone is surprised by what's happening in this game, but the more I think about it, I think my answer to the question would be that I always give the momentum, the favor to the person who had to win to force Armageddon, right? They're the one playing with the psychological edge, and some of the momentum is going to carry over. It has to. It takes a lot to get yourself totally fresh when you feel like you just blew it, right, in the previous game. And so this is a bit more of a runaway train or a landslide than I expected, but Noedirbek has all the momentum. Wesley is clearly not himself today.
And notice how Wesley's queen still stuck the other end of the board, and the king facing fire here. All of white's pieces targeting black's king. The rook, the queen, and the knight picks up the f7 pawn. This has been domination by Noedirbek.
Noedirbek managed to avoid the loser's bracket the entire Chess Kid Cup on his way to winning. He barely might be avoiding the loser's bracket today. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, David, but go ahead. He looks like he might be moving on and keeping in the winner's bracket.
Completely agree. I mean, just disaster. This one from Wesley. The queen's still so far away. There is a threat on the board, actually, of black's queen taking on the G2 square, and there'll be a black knight fork, but unfortunately, it's white's turn. And I think you're delivering checkmate in a variety of ways. You could even slow play it here, just nudge the white queen up to f6, threaten knight to h6 checkmate. Queen and knight combo here is going to do the work. You can take black's pawn on d5, I guess, set up a discovered attack. He goes for that latter option. And how is this black king going to escape? It simply isn't.
It was just such a greedy pawn, wasn't it, to take? I mean, it's easy in hindsight, but the black queen just got so sidetracked. And
You mean A2? Yeah.
Yeah, A2 earlier on when that black queen went a pawn up, and that's very unlike Wesley to have no sense of danger. I think one of Wesley's really strong points is he's got his great sense of danger. And with now 3 pieces attacking, 3 is like the magic number. It's got to be a checkmate, right? I mean, that king, it's got to go. Oh, there it is. It's checkmate.
That's
Oh, my wow. Did he just miss that?
Oh, my God.
He missed everything, and that's it. Noedirbek takes the Armageddon, wins the match against Wesley. So what a performance this was by Noedirbek, with Wesley really